Welcome to the fifth and final segment of the Procurement Reset Roundtable. In this final segment, we'll hear some snippets and examples from the panel leaders on what successful business engagement in procurement and supply chain looks like. I'd like to ask David, any personal or professional snippets that you would share from an industry perspective, which you believe are the successful business leaders' examples in procurement or supply chain engagements?
Yeah, a bit of a tangent here, but I want to go back to something Purvi hit on earlier. I think one of the most challenging supply chains over the next 2 years is going to be the supply chain of talent. It's not that there's a lack of talent available in the marketplace, but we have, Stephen will be familiar with this because he's in the Atlanta market. We have someone on news radio here called Clark Howard, and every morning on my way to get my coffee, I hear about him encouraging people to look for their job, their dream job, and to jump ship, go to another company. It's very challenging when that's the mindset of your associates, your partners in the company, that they're constantly looking for better opportunities outside of the company. And the skill sets required to work within the new world where there is AI, where there is the leveraging of data at lightning speed that serve up alternatives, right? Not doing the analytics yourself, but serving up alternatives and having the skills to evaluate those alternatives, understand the trade-offs, and make the right decision is very different than most of the mindsets of the skills that we seek today. So I think, successful leaders in procurement are going to spend just as much time on talent management, or even more time on talent management, as they do on the processes and the technologies themselves that's going to be leveraged by that talent. And I think that's going to be an incredible challenge today, especially in an inflationary world where everyone's getting 50%, increases to look elsewhere and take a different job that they may or may not be qualified for. It's going to be a challenge, and it's going to require a laser focus to manage that supply chain of talent. So, Christopher, sorry, I might have taken us off on a bit of a tangent there, but it just is extremely challenging today to acquire and keep talent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Can I just add?
Sure, go ahead.
I was going to add just a quick point, David. So one of the things that I've shared with a lot of folks, right, internally and externally, is, we need to look for different type of talent, where people can fly the plane while they're building it, right? Because that's what it really is. Versus sort of that, status quo, check the box mindset. And those are different type of talents that I think we need in the future than, perhaps we've grown over in our functions. Chris, back
Absolutely.
to you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, great dialogue. I mean, I think it couldn't be more true. I think, finding the right talent and resources and retaining it couldn't be more paramount as the talent pool is shrinking and shrinking, especially for people that have that transformational mindset that you're looking for, that aren't necessarily stuck in, the existing way of thinking. It's not easy to find that. And having children that are in that, beginning of their career phase, I can tell you that, the jumping job thing couldn't be more the truth. I mean, we've all experienced that, but I don't think anything near what the next generation is bringing. So it's interesting. So thanks, David. Greg, same question to you. Any insights or, specifics that you might bring that, think would help the rest of the, the team as far as procurement and supply chain?
I want to thank David and Purvi for the discussion on talent. Definitely the Great Resignation, and I'm a contributor to the Great Resignation, having switched jobs in August of 2021. So I didn't jump for 50% more, David. I jumped because I saw an opportunity to really focus on the remaining time. I call it quality time remaining, QTR, in my career. But how we embrace talent and allow them to transition or stay, I think, is one of our key objectives as a leader. And Vijay touched on it. from a technology standpoint, but from a talent perspective, we have a responsibility to build trust with our team, build transparency into how we operate, how we engage with them, and agility. I would move off of flexibility and say agility. We need to be an agile work environment to adapt to what's changing in the workplace. There's this discussion around the metaverse. We're all going to have avatars in the future and show up at work with an avatar as opposed to, actually physically being there. So, it's coming. Hopefully after I retire, but it's coming. So how we adapt to our changing work environment, the virtual workplace, I think is going to be key. You've seen a new term around remote first. Companies are adopting a philosophy of, being remote first, meaning they're a hybrid or a remote environment, and occasionally they'll show up in the workplace. So how we interact, how we collaborate will change and is changing, has changed as a result of the pandemic. And I think Purvi touched on it. How we invest in talent is going to be key. I think we've underinvested in soft skills, the ability for persuasion or influencing outcomes, how we negotiate. Think back to the day where we'd sit across the table from the supplier and negotiate terms, commercial outcomes, et cetera, is changing. And I think technology is going to be a key enabler to how we move forward, not only from a metaverse perspective, but as Don and Steve have talked to, leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning. So fundamentally, our work environment is changing. And I think as a result, people need to focus on their brand. They need to be self-aware of not only their personal brand, but the brand of the function in which they report into. That brand needs to be true to their culture. If they have a command and control culture, they need to operate as such. But to Purvi's point, we're moving away from command and control, compliance-driven procurement functions into more of a trusted advisor role to the business. And that's going to require that we invest differently, not only in the soft skills, but how we lead with process and policy, where we invest in technology. And one final note, I believe my leadership philosophy has been predicated on listen, learn, and then lead. I think we need to adapt more active listening skills and understand where the business is coming from and adapt our process, our policy to the needs of the business rather than forcing a policy or process on them.
That's great, Greg. I totally appreciate your insight there. Thank you very much. Fiji, any snippets for the organization you'd like to share?
Yeah, so first of all, I completely agree with what David talked about in terms of the talent pressure which we have, getting the right talent. And we all know that, the inflation is hitting the roof. It's increasing, and this is actually putting a lot of pressure for the procurement managers in order to buy raw material at a optimized price from wide range of vendors and suppliers, and also compare the qualities and numerous parameters which they have to do. So, one is certainly the price pressure which we have. So what we did is that this is for a Fortune 100 CPG company, which is, and they have similar pressures. And these kind of challenges will continue as we go forward in order to ensure that, we are able to bring the price down, and parameters like volatility of supply and demand, risk, inventory management, and how we can take care of all these. So address this problem, what we did is that we developed a multi-layered analytic solutions in order to help them forecast changes in the price of the commodity over a period of time, providing better decision power for managers in order to buy the product at the right time and from the right supplier at the right place. So it is bringing in again the AI and ML framework, and creating a product for them. So that's what we did for a Fortune 100 company, and they've been able to cut down their procurement cost, sourcing cost by almost 10%, which is huge when you take global sourcing, you know. So, and that plays a very critical role when you don't want to increase the end product price, but you want to cut down your sourcing cost, you know.
Great. Thanks, Vijay.
That's
Appreciate
what
it.
I have to
Stephen, how
say.
about
Yeah.
you? Any insights for the team? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that this whole discussion on talent, I think, is just really, really resonates with me. It was something that I planned to speak to on another question, and I think Purvi made the point right. It's not just um, the sort of notion of having access, but it is how we continuously invest in our talent and enable them to be able to do the jobs and the work that we're asking them to do in a virtual or a hybrid environment, and how we, I think it was Greg who made the point, how we understand the business's strategy and objectives, right? How do we adapt to those? How do we demonstrate the soft skills of not just trust but storytelling, right? Because we ultimately, from a sourcing and procurement perspective, sit in between the business and the supply markets, and we oftentimes have to try to convince them that not that their objectives are wrong, but the ways in which they want to go about achieving those objectives might not be best in terms of our understanding of the supply markets, right? So our ability to be able to engender trust, to be able to tell stories in ways that convince them about the kinds of tactics that they ought to enable, I think just become increasingly more important in a world where we're either virtual or hybrid, right? So that storytelling, that engendering trust, that understanding of the business, and that ability to ultimately deliver on what their requirements are, I think are just going to be even more critical as we continue to learn how to coexist in a world where COVID is here.
I thank you, Stephen. Couldn't agree with you more. All right, Privy. So we already know how you feel about talent. So any other snippets you want to share with the panel?
I would probably say, so I'll mention something about AI. It's a subject near and dear to my heart. It's something I've been actively working and advocating with a lot of my partners before even AI became a thing over the last few years. And, for me, like when I look at some of these things, what I find is so fascinating is, right, as our service providers and our ecosystem and our product providers, they really have to work with the sourcing and procurement leaders to help them understand how the product or solution will help the problems, right? When I look at what used to be, it used to be was technology, IT driven decisions on these types of products and these capabilities. Those decisions are now moving to procurement as the business or sourcing as the business, right? So really investing in those relationships, helping to gaining that trust within the ecosystem, I think is imperative to me. And when we look at AI, right, it's not a technology, it's not IT's job anymore. When you think about who's driving the decision, right? It's the sourcing procurement leaders, and it's based on the features and functionality and the end user experience, period, right? And those things are just paramount. I think the more the ecosystem can help partner with each other, the better we will be together to really evolve this function, right? In its capabilities and what it's capable of, right? Together. So I'm encouraged. I'm super excited to see all of the different partnerships coming together and really helping us to get to a better place, right? Because we're sort of, I call it, we've been the stepchildren that became the stars over the last 2 years of work. And there's a lot of pressure on all of us, right? Quite frankly. And we need to know that our economists are our partners and not just sort of IT's partners.
Yeah, it's part of the transformational journey we're all going through. So thank you. Don, how about you? Anything you want to share with the panel? Final thoughts?
And I believe that, these are exciting times for everyone, right? Even as rough as the pandemic was, it's really challenging us with new thought and leadership around these trying times and what we could do going forward. I'm a strong believer in the technology piece of this, thus Laundress. And, I just think for the patient first movers who are embracing these technologies, it's going to lead to more business intelligence, more transformation around the organizations, and ultimately, I think it's going to put you in a leadership position.
Great. Thanks, Don. And finally, Paul, any insights for the panel?
Thanks, Christopher. Just want to really thank everyone for some of the discussion today. I mean, it's been great. Stephen, what you said basically really hit home that a lot of our teams have been driving so hard, driving efficiencies, but then not really focusing on agility, which is one of the things that I've seen through several different companies. Purvi and David and Greg, you're bringing up the topic of the talent piece and everything else, and all, wonderful discussions and great subjects. I think with AI and everything else, it really does enable a huge set of tools for our teams to operate and create more value for the company downstream. I think the biggest thing is, how do we actually grow that talent to be able to think and interpret and then sell that? So, I mean, Greg, I think you said, the development of the soft skills. Quite often in supply chain, we don't tend to attract the people that are really good at selling their position or knowing how to actually sell. And I don't mean kind of a used car salesman approach. I mean, it's the ability to build relationships both internally and externally. And I think that's so instrumental and key going forward. So just again, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this panel. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Paul. All right. Well, in respect of time, I know that we're kind of close. I didn't get to all the questions I was supposed to, so I apologize. But I think we had a very good, insightful, and meaningful conversation here on the panel today, and how it's accelerating the global procurement and supply chain sourcing transformations and the continuing dynamics that we all are facing in the industry. So appreciate everybody's time and participation this morning, and let's continue our conversations for the next procurement reset. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Goodbye.